Hey y'all, this is David Ducker coming back at you, and today I'm going to be talking about oreads, the people of stone. This is going to be part 2 of my 4-part series regarding the elemental races, which I'm using for my 5th element campaign, which I haven't run yet, but I'm very excited about. Our first video was about Undine, the people of water. They live in the swamps ringing the continent. This is going to be about the oread, the people of stone. So they live in kind of the barren wasteland, the badlands, the rocky highlands that come in from the swamp. But at the center of this is a vast desert, which is where the Ifrit live. So the whole world is kind of concentric rings. There's a ring of swamp, then a ring of badlands, then a dot of desert right in the middle. And of course the sylphs live on the floating sky islands, but we'll get to them in their due turn. They'll be the next video. So oread, let's go appearance first of all. What do they look like? So oread tend to be very tall, very, very bulky. Some of them are muscular. In fact, most of them are muscular, although very thick. And then a few of them tend to obesity as well. They're basic humanoids. Although their skin ranges from through the colors of stone, generally stone gray, though you will find individuals with more of sandstone or ruddy brick kind of color, or a red brown, or even just a brown. But stone gray is definitely the most common. They have crystal that grows out of parts of their bodies. The same way that we as mammals have hair growing out of our bodies, they have crystal. So especially at the tops of their heads and on their face, like beards for the males. Although, on other places as well. So they might have, a fine coating of crystal, just a few here and there jutting out. So they have to actually chisel this off with tiny picks. Very, very specially suited to this task. And scrape it off, chisel it off of their skin. They don't mind that kind of action because their skin is very hard. They actually have a point of natural armor from that. So often they will actually chisel their beards and their hair into interesting designs or patterns, or even sculptures. And then it'll over time it regrows itself constantly, so they have to keep up with that maintenance. Or some of them just chisel it all off and they just go about bald-faced. So in addition to their generally gray and rocky skin, they typically have eyes that are like green emeralds set in their eye sockets. Now some of them have variations of this. Some of them will have what looks more like a amber or a peridot, like a gold color, or even like a black, like opal, or a white diamond. Those are easily the most common, although theoretically any eye color, any kind of gemstone could reside therein. So let's go through biologically. What are their differences? Well, first of all, those growths in their very thick skin or rocky skin. They also have tremendous balance. They're balancing along ledges, so that's very important. It's also very, very difficult to knock them down because of that. So I said a little bit about where they live: the rocky badlands, the highlands. But more specifically, their cities tend to be carved into the walls of great canyons that crisscross the badlands that have been carved by rainfall, or along the walls of enormous sinkholes that have dropped down. There are many, many of these sinkholes, just huge pits in the earth, large enough for them to build their cities along the walls of. And in the canyon cities, they tend to construct very magnificent bridges for themselves. They're typically somewhat more narrow than the other races would like, and they don't usually have guardrails. Because of the great balance of the oreads, they rarely have any kind of problem with falling. and they're very good at climbing, walking on ledges. Excuse me, and their architecture reflects this. So that's their appearance. Let's go through personality. So oreads are just a bastion of lawful behavior. They are conservative, unchanging, like the stone around them. So they think the old ways are the best ways. They think if it's not broke, don't fix it. They're very slow to do any kind of research on new ideas. They're afraid of new ideas, new customs. So very traditional kind of people. So that's a good breakdown of personality. Let's go through their government and organization. So they are actually they're divided into city-states, and these city-states are organized somewhat like ancient Greece, whereas they'll call up the local levy of all of their citizens if they need to go to war. And they typically, each citizen will maintain their own armor, which will be like a full plate style armor, their own tower shield, and their own war pick. Picks are their favorite weapons for dealing with other oreads, which is usually what they're dealing with if they have to go to war. So they set out, they march across the Badlands, and they clash out on the Badlands against each other. They're ruled over by traditional patriarchal house, the house of the patriarchs. Each city, state kind of has its own ruling family. That's just their job to rule the others. Their typical economy is more based around mining, whereas they'll get gemstones or just regular stone, metal, or out of the Badlands, out of the sides of the canyons, deep in caves. They'll go mining. And they trade these resources with typically with the Undines via the sylphs, and we'll get more into the mercantilism of the setting when we talk about sylphs, as they're the great merchant race. But they provide all of these great things for the Undine. So if the Undine need metal spearheads, metal knives, they want stone sculptures or statues. If they want any kind of gemstones for jewelry or precious metals like gold for jewelry, they have to get it from the oreads via the sylphs, who are the great merchants of the setting. And their floating sky islands, they have the most mobility. So that's the economy. The government, like I said, is very patriarchally structured. Now they have a very powerful church as well. Many of them kind of lean towards theocracies, as their high priests are very important. They kind of worship this kind of Earth Mother deity, whereas the patriarchs are kind of the stern father. What they actually worship and yearn for is this loving mother figure. So that's what the church is to them, and their regular leaders are more the stern father. So since we're using Pathfinder for the rules, as I've got the races out of the advanced race guide, we're going to say that their favorite classes then lean towards Paladin, Cleric, Fighter, Rogue, and Wizard. And for the Wizard, we're using the 4 elemental spell schools rather than the 8 standard ones. That's from the Advanced Player's Guide, I believe. So if you do encounter Oread Wizard, expect him to have the Earth School. By tradition, that's what they would pick, and they're very traditional. So yeah, they do have some of those wizards around. They're rogues now. They're very good with traps, stone traps, especially pit traps. They're very, very good at making those. And this is actually how the Oread get the majority of their food. So rogues are very useful to them. In addition to trading for food with the Undine, who are the great fishermen and hunters and gatherers of the setting, the oread hunt a species of water buffalo, or not hunt, but trap. They trap this species of water buffalo. And these buffalo, during the day, they feed in the swamp, eating plants there. And as the sun begins to set, though, they migrate every day from the edge of the swamp into the kind of edge of the highlands so that they can rest without being preyed upon by all the predators of the swamp, like black dragons, Tyrannosaurus rex, froghemoth, the shuggoth. Very dangerous. And while there are predators in the highlands, they're not as severe, and for a water buffalo, they're easier to deal with. So during these great morning and twilight night navigations or migrations, that's when the oreads catch the majority of their food, because their rogues have set traps, usually pit traps, for these water buffalo. So that's very important. Trappers are very, very important to the oread society as well because of that. So they eat a lot of food from their labors. I think that's about it. I'll give I've spoken about the architecture, about the government, the food. I think that's it for oread. I think that's pretty well rounded. That they're theocratic, they're martial, they're standing army. They got trappers going on. Sometimes they get into holy wars with each other, as any good cleric will. That they are great miners and craftsmen. So they would forge many pieces of jewelry, many steel weapons, many stone statues from fine marble. We touched on their biology. So I think that's it. I'm going to stop rambling at you, but I do want you to, in the comments, let me know what you think of the oread that I've just described. Let me know how you do them differently. I know there can be a lot of overlap with them and the dwarfs, so I try to push them as different as possible, especially if you're using both of them as races. Try to make them as different as you possibly can from each other. But leave any comments about how you've seen oreads done, anything you want to add to this that would benefit the setting, because I haven't even run it yet. But I'm going to just sign off now. Thanks for listening to my ramble, and have a good day in YouTube land.